start.
Okay, now I understand that it's still a requirement that we have a roll call vote on everything, so I guess we'll go through that.
Thank you.
Okay, begin with, welcome
You
to
did
Coastside
last.
Fire Protection District Board of Directors meeting, regular board meeting, May 27th, 2020. Roll call, please, Jean.
President Burke,
Yes.
Vice President Cockrell,
Here.
Secretary McShane. Secretary McShane, you were there. Hi. Director McKimmey,
Here at home.
Director Stockman.
Here.
Okay, and Deputy Chief Cox,
Here.
and is Chief Larkin there?
He is
Yes.
here.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else?
Jean Savory.
Yeah, good. I was hoping you were there. Hey, Savory. Okay.
Okay.
Welcome everybody. I hope everybody is well and safe.
All right. We'll dispense with the Pledge of Allegiance. We don't have anybody on or any notice for anybody wanting to make any public comment.
Gary, if you just hold on one sec, maybe ask,
Okay.
because there are a couple of non-members on here.
Okay.
Who is on the phone other than us?
There just may be a member of the public on here, and we have the opportunity for them to make any comments right now.
Do I need to know who they are for the minutes?
Only if they speak, Jean.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask a question at this point?
Go ahead.
President Burke, last time with all of these, because there's a lot of resolutions tonight, are you going to do like one person is going to move?
Yes,
and,
it's going to be myself and Mr. McKimmey, except on the consent calendar, I'll have to have somebody else make the second. But other than that, it's myself, Mr. McKimmey.
and thank you for that.
JB, will you
Director
do the second
Director
on the
Burke.
consent calendar, please?
We're good, Chief Cox?
Yeah. Good to go.
All right.
No public comment.
I make a motion to accept the, first of all, on the consent calendar, Director McKimmey is recused. Do I have a second?
Second. JB.
Moved and seconded. Roll call, please. Any comments? Roll call, please, Jean.
President Burke,
Yes.
Vice President Cockrell,
Yes.
Secretary McShane.
Ginny.
Jenny, where are you?
She's muted.
How do we get her back?
I'll unmute.
There she
I'll-
is.
Okay. Ginny, you unmuted it for a second, then you muted it again. Ginny, it's the top of your screen.
Push the,
The thing where it says mute.
More either, yeah.
Yeah, Ginny, I just sent you a button asking you to unmute. There you go.
Are you there?
okay.
Yes,
Okay, motion by President Burke, seconded by Vice President Cockrell to accept the consent calendar, and McKimmey has recused himself. How do you vote?
Yes.
Okay, and Director Stockman?
Yes.
Okay, motion
All
go
right.
by roll. Thank
With
you.
no objections, I'd like to move on to item D on the continuing business presentation of information report regarding Station 44. Chief Cox.
Thank you. This was at the request of the board, looking at the current facility, Station 44, as a potential location for either a remodel or replacement facility. At the board's direction, Jeff Katz, the architect, and Carrie Burke with land use were brought in just to give some preliminary information. I will say right now that we need to keep this conversation strictly to the lot at Station 44 and no other peripheral potentials with this project. With that, I'll hand it over to Jeff just to kind of give a rundown of the information that he provided and then pass it off to Carrie.
Thanks, Chief. I assume that in your packet you saw the sketches that we put together. We analyzed this site not too much with respect to a remodel, but really with respect to what a reconstruction of a new station on the site would look like. Again, building on the program that was developed for Station 41 and trying to match as much of that as we could. So on this site, it is a relatively small site, some grading issues, definitely challenged from the ability to have any sort of drive-through the way we have at the new El Granada station. But the design that you have there represents the footprint of a 2-story station. We did provide a quick floor plan for the ground level. We didn't reflect the floor plan of the upstairs, but it would house the bunks and the rest of the living quarters. And as you can see on the site plan, kind of limited parking and not a lot of room for other site elements, but it is possible to put a station on this site that certainly could improve over what is there today.
So let me ask this: so the lot on California Street is a no-go?
Bruce,
Bruce, we're not supposed to discuss anything except this site.
Okay.
Yeah, no other properties.
Kerry, can you update us from your research?
Certainly. The lot, of course, houses the existing station. It's zoned single-family residential. So it would be the same exercise that we need a use permit and a coastal development permit to do a complete rebuild. So it's basically what we did for Station House 41. It's really the same type of process, except we don't have that unusual zoning. And it's operated as a house there. There aren't any significant issues. The biggest, you do have the hazmat program there for the fuel that's stored on site. That would obviously be something just to address, which will be done, just standard procedure. But, it is, Jeff did a great job of just putting, something on that site from my point of view. From, there is a scenic corridor there, but, it's still something that through our past experience that with a good design, it seems as though, so far the planning commission seems amenable to the upgrades of your fire station. So I think it's pretty standard. It's a nice flat site with as Jeff indicated, some grading might be necessary, but nothing unusual. And since it's all already developed, we don't have any biological issues. I don't believe that would be a significant drawback because the fact that it's already developed. In a nutshell, if there's any questions, but it's pretty straightforward situation on that site.
And if I can just add a couple of final comments. We did not analyze any of the existing utilities serving the site today, so we did not assess if water, sewer, storm, or power, gas are adequate to support the loads for a new station. I'm fairly confident that the electric would not. Water, sewer potentially are, but obviously those are things that have to be, we would need some continued assessment of that to make sure we understood all the impacts on that site.
Okay.
Let me make it clear that we're just doing our due diligence and looking at this particular property now, similar to what we did on 41. We looked at a number of different locations, and we're doing the same thing to see if this is a possibility and compare it with any other choices that we might have and might want to consider. With that, questions, let's not go into a lot of detail, but let's have some basic questions. Bruce.
Yeah, hey, Jeff, have you considered digging down, dropping the level of the station maybe 4 or 5 feet to make it just a little above street level? That way it would lower the top of the structure down and, the engines wouldn't come in up the ramp, and just food for thought.
Yeah, our plan didn't really spend too much time analyzing the grades out there. I mean, we understand that there's enough of a grade differential that we're not able to come in off the backside and do any sort of drive-through, but setting an
Correct.
actual floor elevation, we didn't really focus too much on that. There's definitely room for improvement over the conditions there now.
Okay, just, yeah, and that's maybe a go, maybe no go, it's down the road. Got it.
I guess I would ask either Jeff or Carrie, has any work been done on traffic flow or traffic access to and from Station 44 in the current location? In other words, I'd heard rumors with some of the proposed development in that area that possibly one of the main roads to Highway 1 would be changed to a one-way road the wrong way.
If I can speak to that,
Well,
John Rydell, the assistant fire marshal or whatever his position is, he told the Board of Subs, he told Mid-Penn that wants to do that structure. There's no way that that road can be one way. Period.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
I have a
also,
question.
the county.
Go ahead, Steve, go ahead.
Question probably for Chief Cox. We never really have seemed to have an open dialogue on using the existing site. And I would assume some of the reasons were that just what Jeff is expressing, that it's a small site, it was hard to do a drive-through, was probably the big element. And then some of the existing problems of taking a little bit longer to get out to the highway. So I'm assuming it's those two things. So with asking Jeff to go forward with this, I guess it's assuming those two givens. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think, Steve, the thing that we're really solving for is location versus the desirability of anything else. And I think that's really looking at that on this current site. What are the constraints? Is it even feasible?
Right. And I know this is a really early comment, and we'll avoid getting into deep stuff, but you know, it's always a challenge to build on an existing site because you have nowhere to place the existing crew.
Right.
So I don't know the consideration of that. I'm sure you have at your level. So I know that's a challenge.
Let me interject and make a suggestion here that number one, the obvious, there's no rush to do this. In fact, until we get complete with 41 and see the new budget, that I'm sure it wouldn't be in our interest to do anything rash at this point.
Mm-hmm.
What I would like to ask, and that is, we have a structured committee made up of JB and Steve Stockman. I'd like to ask them to separately, or together, go over the subject, meet with the chief, talk with Jeff or anybody else, and discuss a lot of things, like what do you do if you tear down the building? Is it possible to do that? What other ramifications or structures we might have? And I'd like to have you, Steve and JB, come back and be on the agenda in June and tell us what you found. And we'll just take it from there. And
Very good.
it may be we'll say we're not going to do anything, we're going to take another step, but let's take that initial step, if that's agreeable.
Yes.
Well,
It would be
check
nice
this.
if we could include Jeff in that conversation.
Excuse me?
It would be great if we could include Jeff in that original meeting. So, but those
He's
are
made
just logistics.
himself very accessible. I'm sure
Yes.
he wouldn't object to
Yeah.
meeting with you two fine gentlemen.
Great.
By the way, there's no extra pay for this committee.
If
Yes.
Okay. If that's it, if there's no questions,
real
Jeff and-
quick, just for Steve and JB's benefit, I am planning to be out at 41's a week from Friday, the 5th. So just let me know if there's value in trying to have a conversation at that point.
Great. I will be available if everyone else is.
Me too, I'm available.
terrific.
Okay, we can talk offline then. Thank you.
Excellent.
Jeff and Kerry, thank you very much. Chief Cox.
Yes, thank you both.
Great.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Back to the
Bye-bye.
agenda,
Good meeting.
Continuing business, item A, Community Facility District Number 22, annexation. Number 1, Carnoustie Place. Chief Cox.
Yes, this would be annexation with a result of a special annexation election, and it would require a motion to adopt this resolution. I do have the result here to open in front of you, the sealed results.
Please open, show the results.
Double layered this time.
I'm sorry?
I got to get through a few layers. It is marked yes on the ballot.
Okay. Then I make a motion to adopt resolution 2020-17, a resolution declaring the results of the special annex election.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call, please. Jean?
President Burke,
Yes.
Vice President Cockrell,
Yes.
Director McKimmy,
Yes.
Director Stockman,
Yes.
and Secretary McShane.
Yes.
Passes 5-0 by roll call.
Moving on to item B, under A, I make a motion to adopt ordinance number 2020-02, an ordinance of the Coastside Fire District levying special taxes on on Community Facilities District number 22.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please, Jean.
President Burke,
Yes.
Vice President Cockrell,
Yes.
Director McKimmy,
Yes.
Director Stockman,
Yes.
and Secretary McShane. Hello, Secretary McShane. Did we lose you again, Jenny?
I said yes.
Oh, okay.
Passes 5-0 by roll call.
Thank you very much. Moving on to item B, weed abatement. Chief Cox.
Yes, so this will be the opportunity for a public hearing for any property owner having any objection to the proposed removal of such weeds that are listed. Not hearing or seeing any public comment, this would be a motion for you to accept, approve a resolution for the removal of weeds based on the list of addresses and APNs we provided.
I make a motion to adopt resolution 2020-18.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call, please, Jean.
President Burke,
Yes.
Vice President Cockrell,
Yes.
Director McKimmy,
Yes.
Director Stockman,
Yes.
Secretary McShane. Secretary McShane.
Yes.
5-0, passes 5-0 by roll call. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to item C of the new business resolution regarding a new contract from Coastside Fire Protection District with CAL FIRE. Chief Cox.
Thank you, Director Burke. This is in response to the letter of intent last year sent by the Board of Directors to CAL FIRE regarding the intent for a continuation of service with CAL FIRE moving forward. I will pass it over to Jean at this point, as this is probably the best perspective, the third-party legal.
So good evening. This year, your 7-year contract with CAL FIRE ends on June 30th. They have now proposed to you a new 7-year contract. The terms of this contract and the form of the contract mirror the contract you currently have in place. If approved, this would be a new 7-year contract with a not to exceed amount of $70,929,629. Exhibit A to the contract is a very detailed scope of work. I won't walk through that with you. I attempted on page 2 of your staff report to give you a high-level summary of it, and the chief, I'm sure, is available to answer any questions regarding that. Exhibit B to the contract is the budget detail. It calls for quarterly payments. Exhibit C are the contract are the general terms and conditions, and I only wanted to call out a couple of them for you because they're fairly unique to this contract. As with your current contract, At the end of this new contract, you would have a 1-year time frame to give notice if you want to renew the contract. Both parties have the right to terminate this contract upon the giving of 1 year's notice. With that, I'll stop, and I'm happy to answer any questions or to defer those to Chief Cox and Chief Larkin.
Chief Larkin, did you have any comments?
No, I'm good.
Okay, just before we get in discussion, I'm going to make a motion to adopt resolution number 2020-46, resolution of the Board of Directors of the Coastside Fire District approving a contract with the CAL FIRE from July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2027. That's the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, moved and second, discussion.
So this would not go in effect until July?
That's correct.
Okay, so there's no real rush to do this right now?
July of this year,
Correct.
July 1 of 2020.
next
Right.
basically a month from now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me.
I have a
if-
question. I have a question,
Sure.
Gene. Gene, that I was not on the board when the existing contract was established. Is there any, you said it mirrors the existing contract. Is there anything significant that differs from the contract, from the original contract, or does it pretty much read the same?
It pretty much tracks. I mean, the dollars obviously are different,
Right.
but it pretty much tracks.
Okay.
Current contract.
Thank you.
I would say that it's a much neater packet than our previous contract. It's a little bit clearer. The number of pages have not declined. It is still a very lengthy document. Let me make just a couple of quick comments too. It's been mentioned that this contract is for a little over $70 million over that 7-year period. Our last contract was, for your reference, was for $50 million. It's just a couple of key items that we're all aware of. It has 27 line staff and today support staff. It has 15 paramedics, and it will have, when its position is filled, a new division chief of operations, which we don't have. But as already been mentioned, we have the ability to amend this contract, and as with the last contract, we amended it numerous times and took various positions off and added positions depending on the district's need. But I would emphasize the fact that it has a very complete operations plan that was put together by our 2 board members, and it is still the complete authority, the ownership of all the equipment, the fiduciary responsibility, the priorities and so forth still rests with this board of directors. But with that, I would certainly concur that it's a very similar one to our last contract. Any further comments or questions?
I have a question probably for Gene or the unit chief Larkin. In these uncertain times of the possibilities of cutbacks in costs to CAL FIRE, in other words, yeah, I'll wait for you, thank you. Yeah, and there's talk about at every level of public service, perhaps pay cuts for staff. And if that pay cut, how would that, say CAL FIRE through the state asked its employees to take a 10% cut. How would that be reflected, or how would that affect this contract? Would it affect the numbers, or does it stay true to the cost that's reflected in there? And Gene, you might be, either of you, please.
Gene, if you want me to, I can handle that one.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
So your contract is for top step. So those are the budgeted figures that we give you. So if our department or the state decides to take a 10% allocation and reduces our pay by 10%, you'll see a savings of that 10% in your contract.
Okay.
It's just like any kind of raise. So as we build our budgets and as we build our contracts, we put just in the event that there's a salary increase, there's a small amount that's built into that contract for those negotiation phases. Very, very rarely do we have a contract that's 7 years where we don't project that out in the event, because it's a not to exceed contract. So we can't exceed that amount. So we have to plan for any kind of pay raises or anything of that nature. So along with those pay raises, any pay cuts, it would be a benefit. I won't say a benefit, but it would be on the district's benefit, because we would be charging you less based on that pay reduction.
Okay, that's understandable. So when I look at the contract and the projected numbers of a 5% increase each year, that might not be that 5%. That might compensate for that scenario where salaries are reduced.
Yeah,
So-
that also takes into effect that 5%, any changes in the benefit rates or any of those other things that affect the overall contract, along with a pay raise or a pay deduction.
Okay.
Other
Thank you.
questions?
I would have had
Nope.
the same question Steve had, which is a very good question.
Okay.
So this
Anything else?
And I'll just put out there as Director Burke had mentioned, in our previous contract, we had some reductions and some increases. So the contract can be renegotiated and changed, annually if we plan far enough ahead. It just needs to have an amendment put in if we make significant personnel changes or dollar changes.
The last comment I would simply make is I think our experience over the past 7 years and even longer than that is we've certainly found that the cost benefit, significant cost benefit to the Coastside Fire Protection District. I'd also note that the operations have ran very smoothly, and among other things, we've had no litigation. We've not had to bother with hiring or training or anything else. So it has been a very beneficial contract from our point of view, and I assume from CAL FIRE's. With that, if there's no other questions, roll call, please, Gene.
Sandy, that's flight line, Sandy.
Ready?
Hello?
Who's
Can
on
you
the
hear
phone?
me?
All right.
Jean
Jean,
Headley, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
President Burke,
yes.
Vice President Cockrell,
Yes.
McKimmey,
Yes.
Director Stockman,
Yes.
Secretary McShane.
Yes.
Thank you. Passes 5-0 by roll call.
I would note for our benefit that this completes a very key item that was on the Coastside Fire Protection Strategic Plan, and we've done it. Great. Moving on, under new business, discuss proposed update to fees. Chief Cox.
Yeah, I'll defer to Gene on this one again, please.
Yes, good evening. We're seeking your policy direction on this next item. The fees that are established in your ordinance setting fees have not been adjusted since 2006. And so Chief Cox took a look at those fees and is proposing some adjustments to them. In order to come up with the proposed adjustments, he did what the law requires, which is to determine the actual cost of providing these services. And he did that by looking at the average number of hours it takes to complete, for example, a particular kind of inspection, multiplied that by the hourly rate of pay for the employee who would be conducting that inspection. And with that came to the proposed fees, which you'll see in attachment 2 to the staff report. What we're seeking tonight is your direction on whether you wish to do full cost recovery for these particular sets of services which you offer to the residents within the district. If you do, then we would bring back to you an amendment to your ordinance which would update the fees so that they would reflect what you see in attachment 2. If you have any specific questions about the fees or how those were calculated, I'll defer those to Chief Cox.
I will make a motion to ask the staff to make a motion that is the board's intent to update our fee structure for full cost recovery and to ask the staff to bring back an amended ordinance at a June meeting. That's the motion.
Second.
Any further discussion?
I have a couple of general questions. Chief Cox,
AJ.
do you expect any pushback on any of the fees is the first
was.
question.
I
And the
asked- I hit
the
iPad
second
and
question would be,
I disappeared.
I see the individual, what the individual increases would mean. Do you project a total increase to the district, from kind of determining what existing fees bring in and what those increases would mean to our overall budget increase?
Yeah, that's a great question, Director Stockman. I think first of all, as far as any pushback would be, people's familiarity and kind of how often they're using these plans and understanding kind of how the intricacies of them work. So there's always that potential for the public comment about it. I think from the district's perspective, over the past 14 years, the cost of actually reviewing plans and doing inspections has gone up. And the law says that we should charge for what it costs, not above and beyond, but what the actual cost is to the district to go and do an inspection. So I think it's in the best interest of the district to really keep in line every few years with reviewing what the actual costs are. And it should be noted, not all the costs have changed. There's a few in there that there's no change. It's adequately reflected in the number of hours that it takes. But several of them, commercial buildings especially, take a lot of time for our inspectors to go through, and this is updating that realistic time that it takes.
I'm good.
I'd also point out, I think you noticed that the last time we updated these fees was 2006. So a lot of increases since then. Further questions?
I would ask, I've read these fees. I'm not a builder, and it's been a long time since we remodeled our house. They do not appear to be very high to me at all. What everybody else costs, these fees seem pretty modest. Like I said, I don't know what standard. Chief Cox, you see this all the time.
Yeah, so I've looked at a lot of fee schedules from different agencies throughout the county. It's really a direct reflection of the pay rate at which the employees are being paid to do that work. So ours are, overall in the county, not the highest, not the lowest. But they do now accurately reflect the realistic costs of what it takes to perform these duties, as opposed to what we're currently charging, which may be a little under.
Right, thank you. Yeah.
This would be coming back to us for a vote in June. This is just intent to get it back to us. All right. Any further questions? Roll call, please, Jane.
President Burke,
Yes.
Vice President Cockrell,
Yes.
Director McKimmy,
Yes.
Director Stockman,
Yes.
Secretary McShane.
Yes.
Passes 5-0 by roll call.
Thank you very much. Moving on, item B, adjustment to board compensation, Chief Cox.
Again, my third and final Gene Savory deflection for the night.
Okay.
So good evening again. By way of this report, we are bringing to you an ordinance which, if you find acceptable, you could introduce in order to increase the board's compensation. Your current rate of compensation, which is $125 per meeting for 2 meetings each month, was established in 2015. According to state law, you could increase that by 5% per year. You've not done that since 2015. So you have the option of now increasing that meeting rate to $167.50 per meeting for 2 meetings per month. If you wish to do that, then you would introduce the ordinance which we have attached, moving the per meeting fee to that level. And I'm happy to answer your questions.
Before you do, I'm going to make a motion that we that we would approve a amendment to the ordinance and ask for a staff report coming back to the board in June for a final vote. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion. Let me make a thing, because I asked to put this on Look, my feeling is, first of all, it's been 5 years since we've had an adjustment. And before that, I think it was 8 years before. This is within the legal statute and the framework that the state has established for this. And I think given the duties and responsibilities of the board of directors, we're running in the recent audit on our net financial fiduciary responsibility, some $22 million operation, a $12 million annual expense budget. We just signed a contract for $70 million or approved a contract for $70 million for CAL FIRE. And I just think that this is a reasonable amount. The restrictions that we had previously, as Gene has mentioned, that it's subject to only 2 meetings a month. There is no travel within the district, et cetera. All those things would remain the same, but the fee per meeting for up to 2 meetings would be increased. Questions and comments?
My only question would be, this is JB, is about where would that put us relative to the other boards of a similar, with it, bearing in mind the budget we have to be essentially accountable for. Would that be on the high side, on the low side, in average, or what? Because as Chairman Burke pointed out, we're looking at a $12 million budget here annually. That's a fair piece of change where I come from. So it sounds to me like this would not be exorbitant at all, especially since we decided to cap it at a maximum of 2 meetings per month. Even if we attend 4 or 5 meetings, we only get reimbursed for 2.
I have not done a survey of other boards. From my experience, the compensation for board members and council members varies greatly between jurisdictions. If you'd like, I can gather that information and bring that back to you if you introduce this tonight, so you'd have that before you on the second reading.
Please do that, Gene. Just a couple examples would be helpful.
Okay.
Steve, did you have a question?
No, a comment though. I do like the idea of kind of, and I commend Chief Cox, is kind of cleaning up house and updating all these things, and especially as they relate to the renewal of the contract. You know, it looks like some of this is somewhat housekeeping of just bringing it current and up to date, and what's legally dictated. So I encourage that.
Through the chair, this is Jean Headley. May I say something?
Yes.
I know
Yes.
it's on the agenda. It says it's supposed to be a public hearing, but I didn't hear one opened yet.
I'll open a public meeting. Any public comments?
There's none raised on the screen.
Public meeting is, public hearing is closed.
Thank you.
Any further comments from anyone?
Yeah, the only other thing, in reading this, I'm also seeing a lot of information here concerning airfare, automobile, car rental, taxis, breakfast, meals and incidental expenses. This seems to encompass more than just our meeting. I'm hoping that this is all, I'm looking at some of these reimbursement rates, and depending on the city, they're adequate, they may not be. I'm just kind of looking at the whole thing. So may I assume that would be included in this resolution that comes back to the board?
Yes, those rates are set in your ordinance currently, and those would remain as set.
Okay, thank you.
Ginny, did you have a question?
You're muted, Jenny.
Unmute yourself. There you
There you
go.
go.
Okay. Also, Jean Savory, I think a good idea would be to look at fire boards, not necessarily look at other boards that aren't flavor.
Okay, I will do that.
Thank you.
Okay, then what we've done is we have a motion to update our compensation ordinance and ask the staff to bring back the final draft of that at our June meeting. Is that correct, Gene?
Yes.
Correct.
Gene Savory, yes.
That's correct.
Okay. I don't know, do we need to vote on that?
Yes, you do.
All right.
Because you're
Roll
introducing
call,
the ordinance.
please. Roll call, Gene Hadley.
President Burke,
Yes.
Vice President
Cockrell, yes.
Director McKimmy,
Yes.
Director Stockman,
Yes.
Secretary McShane. Secretary McShane,
Unmute yourself, Ginny.
unmute, Jenny.
There you
Jenny,
go.
Batch.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Anita, yes.
Yes.
Is that a yes?
I read
Just
her
nod
lips.
your head.
I can't see her. I can't hear her.
Yes.
Okay,
She
5 by roll.
indicated yes.
And may I ask anybody, if you have phones, could you mute them or put them on buzz or something?
Yes.
All right.
Thank
Moving
you.
on. Thank you. We'll have that back on the agenda in
I am
June.
muted.
All right, moving on. Item C, view and discuss district signage policy, and I'll take this one. This is probably unnecessary, but let me just go over a couple of items. Number one is that, first of all, we do not have any kind of a policy regarding any signs that we placed on our district properties at all. Those requests that have come in have been handled by the fire chiefs or the appropriate person and have been fine. As time goes on, and with the popularity of certainly of first responders and firefighters, there's probably going to be more requests to have various signs on the property as well as inside the property. I would call your attention to the last election. We had, I think it was a battalion chief from Redwood City that was on promoting some public good. I forget exactly what it was. And we also had a firefighter who was shown repeatedly in the last election in November. So just to kind of make sure that we have some kind of an understanding of what our policy is, you see the items that I've included in your packet. My expectation is that 99.9% of any requests that we would receive would be handled strictly by the fire chiefs and would not involve the board at all. However, having
I disagree.
said that, this simply gives that authority to the chiefs. If there is unusual things that come up that require, and I have no idea exactly what they might be right at this moment. For example, maybe get out the vote request or things like that, that might have some political connotation or something like that, that we would ask the judgment of the chiefs to bring it to the board if there's some question. That is the intent of this policy. Questions or any comments?
Well,
Can I make a
as you
motion?
know,
Excuse me?
as you know, so make the motion, I'll second, then I'll comment.
Okay, I make the motion to accept the signage policy that's dated May 11, 2020.
Second.
Moved and second, discussion.
Okay, I brought this issue up because all of a sudden these signs appeared at Station 44, and I'm assuming other stations. And I have no problem with the content whatsoever. I encourage the content, but it kind of bugged me that nobody checked with the board about putting signs on district property. So, and I disagree with you. It needs to go before the board, not just the fire chief.
Well, okay, then I think this covers it, and we just require, I'm sure the good judgment of the chief that if there's some particular item that is a public good, maybe just an email to get the flavor of the board. If there's any objections, or if there is, it would come back to the board for a vote. With that, we have a motion and a second to adopt the Coastside Fire Protection District signage policy. Roll call, please, Gene.
President Burke,
Yes.
Vice President Cockrell,
Yes.
Director McKimmy,
No.
no. Director
Correct.
Stockman,
Yes.
Secretary McShane,
Yes.
Passes 4-1.
All right, moving on to item D, review, discuss, improve surplus of equipment, Chief Cox.
Yes, so as you may know, the storage area at Station 40 upstairs above the administrative area for quite a few years has been just kind of an area of storage. Our PPE cache has been held up there, and we've been doing some house cleaning to reduce the load of unneeded and unnecessary equipment up there. That includes computers from the 90s, old printers, a lot of old turnouts that are past date and have no value or use to them. Things from years of accumulation. In front of you is a list of all of those items and kind of the status of them, whether they're damaged, whether they're past their usable life. I will note that on all of the computer hardware, Jay pulled out all of the hard drives. So all of the hard drives are out of those devices. There's not anything that has any district content on it. And then everything else is pretty self-explanatory. This list comes before you, obviously, because it's extensive and really to get your approval to dispose of these items.
I would move that the chief dispose of the surplus equipment that's listed on this sheet dated May 27th, 2020.
Second.
Discussion.
Just a question, does this just go to a single vendor to sell it? Does it go to a contractor that does surplus equipment? How does this actually work?
Yeah, so there's a variety of different methods to do it. One method is to go to a vendor for kind of the scalping world as far as surplus. Other items will go to potentially departments that have a cadet program and don't need turnouts that are serviceable, but they need them just to train with.
Right.
And others may go to e-recycling, e-waste, because they have no intrinsic value. So it's not as simple as just one vendor get rid of it all. It's going to be a going through item by item to get the correct disposition on it.
Right, and I imagine that within the statewide CAL FIRE that you probably share those, right? I mean, in other words, there's a clearinghouse within CAL FIRE at the state level to address equipment like this.
We do it at the state level. We do it definitely on our more of our rolling stock. We have a surplus program. At the unit level, we have a fire logistics officer that runs that entire process for surplusing items back into the public, basically. But it's a big list, and it will take us some time to get through all of these items and actually get them surplus properly.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any further questions? Roll call, please, Jean.
President Burke,
Yes.
Vice President Cockrell,
Yes.
Director McKimmey,
Yes.
Director Stockman,
Yes.
Secretary McShane.
Yes.
Passes 5-0 by roll call.
Moving on to item E, adopt resolution 2020-19 establishing an appropriation limit for the district for the year 2020-21. Chief Larkin.
I'll take it for Chief Larkin here.
Okay.
This is the annual appropriations limit that is required by the district to be approved based on information that comes from the county.
I move to approve resolution number 2020-19.
Second.
Discussion. This is pure boilerplate, boys. This is, all right. Anything else? Roll call, please, Jean.
President Burke,
Yes.
Vice President Cockrell,
Yes.
Director McKimmey,
Yes.
Director Stockman,
Yes.
Secretary McShane.
Yes.
Passes 5-0 by roll call.
Item F, adopt resolution 2020-20, resolution authorizing San Mateo County place a benefit assessment in the Half Moon Bay Fire Protection District Assessment Zone. Chief Larkin or Chief Cole?
Yeah, I'll take this one. This is again, just the annual update for the Half Moon Bay Fire Protection Assessment on the tax roll. Essentially something that has to be done every year to update that tax roll.
I just would make note that this is not increasing any taxes whatsoever. This and the following item having to do with the Old Point Montera district are just an update each year. They do not increase taxes. With that, I move to approve resolution number 2020-20.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call, please, Jean.
President Burke,
Yes.
Vice President Cockrell,
Yes.
Director McKimmy,
Yes.
Director Stockman,
Yes.
Secretary McShane.
Yes.
Oh,
Moving on to item G, resolution 2020-21, a resolution authorizing San Mateo County place a benefit assessment in the Point Montera assessment zone. Chief Cox?
Yep, the same as the Half Moon Bay assessment zone, just for the Point Montera for the tax roll for this next year.
I move to approve resolution number 2020-21. Bruce
I
is
second
gone.
it. Bruce is
It's
gone.
moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
I want to say something, Mr. President,
Sure.
to the people listening. I'm very proud that our fire district, when we consolidated, we kept that, we reduced the Point Montera assessment. And the people here, the taxpayers in Montera and Moss Beach are very, very happy about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Jane.
can you remind me who made the
What was it? Any question?
second?
Roll call.
Gary,
Who?
Gary,
No,
Steve,
Steve Stockman made the second.
Thank you. I didn't get that. Thank you. President Burke,
yes.
Vice President Cockrell,
yes.
Director McKimmy,
Yes.
Director Stockman,
Yes.
Secretary McShane.
Yes.
Passes 5-0 by roll call.
Thank you. Moving on to item H through double E. All of them are resolutions determining the tax liability for community facility districts. And with Jean Savary's approval, I'm going to make a motion to approve the resolutions letter H through double E to place a
Second.
special tax for the fiscal year to 2021 for those community facilities districts listed from H through double E.
Second.
Does that work, Jean Savary?
That is fine to do it that way, yes.
Any discussion? Roll call, please, Jean.
President Burke,
Yes.
Vice President Cockrell,
Yes.
Director McKimmy,
Yes.
Stockman,
Yes.
Yes from McShane.
Okay, passes 5-0 by roll call.
Thank you. Moving on to Board of Directors report. There was no Finance Committee, but in our packet, as you know, is the publicly available spreadsheet that shows all of our expenses year to date for now. I would just make the general observation that there's nothing out of line. It looks completely up to date. It did stick out to me that I did notice that we have passed the $1 million mark in our CalPERS payments thus far this year, which is a kind of a noteworthy item. We're 92% of revenue for the year. We're 69% of the expense budget. And in the packet, it also has the amount of money that was spent for the budget year 220 for Station 41. Any questions?
I wanted to add that on the finance part, it was very nice of Chief Cosgrave to bring the checks up to me, and I signed them all here at my home, in my office. And that worked out so well during this COVID-19 quarantine that we're doing.
Thank you. Moving on, volunteer committee report. Director Cockrell.
No meeting, no report.
Land and Structures Committee. I think we've had anything that either of Director Stockman or JP
Nothing other than we have discussed tonight.
Okay. Then moving on, Special District Association, Director McKimmey.
No meeting, no reports.
ALA, JPA, Director McKimmey.
I think there was a Zoom meeting that I missed. They were going to vote on the budget if they had a quorum. I don't know what happened.
Okay. Very good. Director McKimmey, anything that you wanted to add about the progress on Station 41?
I checked it out the other day, and I said, oh, the flagpole looks good. So there's an eagle on top of the flagpole. I thought it looked very, very cheesy. And I just want to bring that across. I told Tim Honda, go get a ladder and go cut that thing off of there. It looks, that's just my opinion.
Maybe unscrew ball.
Well, Bruce, let me ask you this. Have you looked into doing what they did in front of the sheriff's station and put the cell antenna on top of the flagpole?
No, I have not.
Okay.
I just thought it looked cheesy.
Okay.
I'm sure it was Jeff's
It's
design.
noted. It's noted. We have
I'd
a
like
cheesy.
to ask-
We have a cheesy eagle. We'll have to take a look at it.
Director McKimmey, is there a
Yes, ma'am.
possibility that I could visit the new station?
Yeah, go for it.
Do I call ahead and let them know?
No, just go.
Okay.
Emergency
If you
preparedness,
want to
Director
meet me
Stockman.
there or something, I could give you a tour.
Wear a mask.
Wear a mask.
For emergency preparedness, of course, in these times, we have not been gathering. Again, as I said last meeting, Chief Cosgrave has done a wonderful job of keeping the community engaged and informed, and his newsletters are very valuable. You know how we're seeing it all around us. When you lose momentum, you know, it does take longer to come back up to speed, and I think his newsletters are going to help keep us at least on solid ground. So no report. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Attorney's report.
No report, thank you.
Fire Chief report. Chief Cox and Chief Larkin.
Yeah, just a few things. First of all, on the COVID-19 side, our crews remain healthy. We have been going on still flu-like symptom calls, what we call screen positive calls. The good news is our PPE supply is sufficient at the moment. And we've also applied for a regional grant with all the other fire agencies in the county for additional PPE that would keep us going for another 90 days should there be a second wave. So that's good. We did have an incident where somebody with flu-like symptoms entered the fire station living area where the crews were. The crews obviously potentially were exposed, so we've just been revisiting operationally how we are living day to day to make sure we prevent that in the future. As far as operations go, calls in general are below normal. We're still trending about 20% below normal. You'll see on your statistics. One call of note was that rescue off of the Ritz-Carlton. Two people went out there late evening. The sun went down, the tide came in, and they were trapped on the rocks out there. The state park's swimmer did a night swim rescue, which is pretty bold, and was successfully rescued, both of them. We had Rescue 40 and all three companies out there with a rope system to get them back up to the top of the cliff as well.
Wow.
As far as CAL FIRE goes, we have entered level 3 staffing, and what that means is we have 3 of the 4 CAL FIRE wildland funded engines in the county now staffed, as well as a bulldozer, and that's just a reflection of the fire threat throughout the county. As far as training goes, we're still doing it virtually, the EMS side for all of our paramedics. We still have an in-house fire academy going on for some of our new trainees, and we hope to get back in-person training with some of our specialized skills, low-angle rescue and confined space next month, and then cliff rescue, rope rescue technician class in July. As far as prevention is concerned, we're still transitioning to the new Streamline software. You'll remember a few months ago you approved transition to a new inspection software. They've been meeting regularly with them, getting the data transferred over, and they're making some big strides there. And we've just started to see a pretty big uptick in the plan reviews now that the dam has broke, as per se, with construction happening again. A lot of projects have come through that were stuck in the pipeline for the actual inspectors themselves. As far as facilities go, we have a punch list walk with Jeff Katz next week. It's Fire Station 41. It's just to identify and address any issues that need to be brought forward to him before the project ends. We do have still a little bit of time on the furniture, the FF&E. As I've said before, we've ordered it, but we just found out last week that the company that we placed the order with for recliners went out of business and is no longer making furniture. So we've been having to pivot a little bit quickly to kind of cover ourselves to get this stuff. We're going along. Things have been ordered. It's just going to be a little bit of a variable time frame to get them. Fire Station 40, there is the potential that we're going to need to replace some flooring on the crew side of the station. With this COVID-19, having carpet in an area where we're walking through, we don't have the ability to sanitize our floors in the living space over there. So we're working within the budgeted item for a station improvement to look at what it would look like to get a floor that we can sanitize. And that's really because we have a high call volume, especially with the rotating ambulances that come through here going on patients and just tracking in and out. So it's something that we're working on. And at Station 44, we've been notified by our forester that there are several trees on the backside of Station 44 that are either potentially going to fall in the road or one potentially on the station, and a third one that's interfering with the repeater antenna that's at the back of the station. So I will likely be coming back with a recommendation from the forester about what needs to be done and what the process would be to either trim or remove some of those trees. As far as apparatus are concerned, the new vehicles, staff vehicles were ordered. One has already been received. We're doing the what we call Fleet Week, which is one of our large maintenance weeks for our apparatus right now, which is just rotating all of the apparatus through to get their annual services, fluids, all of the issues that they have addressed. We hope to bring the volunteers back next month to resume their training and working on the apparatus. And last week, you probably heard the county approved about $400,000 for this evacuation platform countywide for the next 3 years, and we are included in that. So we'll have that rolling out over the next few months. As far as grants are concerned, we've made the purchase for the wildland gear under the Volunteer Fire Assistance Grant for 2019. And we've also applied for the 2020 Volunteer Fire Assistance Grant for 5 sets of turnouts for our volunteers as well. So we should hear back about that later in the year. With that, we will have a lot more about the budget presentation next month as far as recommendations and projections and whatnot. On the personnel side, we have received the list of potential candidates for the staff service analyst, and we'll be scheduling those interviews. Maybe most importantly, we hired 2 battalion chiefs, David Hibden, who comes out of our fire prevention office and has been working over on the coast here for the last 10 years, promoted from captain to battalion chief. And that's a big win for the district and for us from his knowledge and his experience here. And we're excited that he is the 2nd battalion chief assigned to the coast. We also hired Battalion Chief Brian Pottinger, who comes to us from the Pebble Beach Battalion down in Monterey. He was a fire captain paramedic in Pebble Beach, has a lot of rescue experience, both ocean and cliff rescue, and comes to us with a lot of incident management experience as well. And we're really excited and lucky to have him jump ship from Monterey and come up and join us here in San Mateo. With that, we got our District of Transparency Award, so that's in the office. We can now view it and touch it. We'll be getting the distinction paperwork submitted here momentarily. With that, just thank you all for the time and hard work to the 7-year plan. That was a heavy lift, and I think there's the spirit of cooperation throughout this group of people and our organization right now. It's really shining, and I'm just happy to be a part of it. Thank you.
Questions, Chief?
I have questions. So these 2 battalion chiefs, I can see one, but are we going to pay for both new chiefs? Are we splitting one chief with?
Yeah. So
Bayside?
one of the battalion chiefs is fully funded by the district. The other position is split coded between the county and the district. So they are that roving position that reduces the overtime on both sides.
So when the district is fully staffed and Bayside is fully staffed, so we basically would only need the guy 1 day a week, correct?
Yep.
So where is he? So we're paying for half of him. What's he doing the other times?
It's always vacation.
Yeah. So there's always, well, not always, but usually there's at least one battalion chief on vacation or training each week. That's how we set it up for the year.
Okay.
Half the time that's usually on the coast and half the time that's usually on the bay side. So he will pick up that open spot on either side. And it works out evenly. At the end of the day, it's about even as far as which side of the program he works on as he goes throughout the year.
Okay. Could we get a report on that, a staffing report every month?
Potentially, yes. I can maybe chat with Director Burke a bit more about what that would look like.
Okay. And I was talking to my good friend Paul Cole a couple weeks ago, and he was asking about Chief's report and whatnot. And he was asking if CAL FIRE was still giving the report on staffing. And I said, gosh, Paul, not that I recall. So can we get a report each month on staffing as far as giving and taking personnel from Bayside to Coastside and vice versa, and rank for rank and position for position, please?
Yeah, so I'm unfamiliar with a report that was ever produced at rank for rank by Chief Cole. I do know that the unplanned overtime and the number of times the county covered the coast and the coast covered the county, we can do. My concern with that is there are quite a few positions that are hard to reflect one for one. And I'll take the training officer position, for example. That training officer, who's a fully county funded position, runs the entire paramedic coordination of the coast. He also runs the training program for the coast. So he would not be reflected in a report for per rank, which side and what location somebody works. So I don't think a report for, everyone's working location every day would be necessarily reflective of the true span of the workload that's being disseminated across the county.
Okay, how about everybody else but the training chief? Captains, engineers, paramedics.
May I ask, what if we had that information, what would we do with it?
We would know what's going on. I want to pay for what we get and not pay for more than we get.
No, on the statistics, the monthly statistics, what that tells us is the number of times that our engines have covered over the hill and the cemetery was covered here on the coast. Is that correct?
Correct.
But you want to know who's on those engines?
No. The district pays for X amount of personnel a day. And sometimes there's openings on Bayside and our personnel go over there. Correct, Chief?
Correct. So it's a cooperative fire protection agreement, which means we cooperate as much as we can. If the Bayside has extra, we send them over here to prevent overtime from being generated. If there's an extra person here, we may send them to the Bayside. So I'll give you a really good example of that. Since Chief DeLay left, we've had a lot of open battalion chief days. And a non-Coastside fire position was filling in a majority of those days on the coast, not at overtime, but on a regular non-funded day for that person. So it happens. We move people around because of the spirit of the agreement we're in is cooperation. My only concern is starting to track down position by position where people are working.
It can be done though, correct?
I assume, yeah. I can't. I have never done it. So
let's take this offline and discuss what might be done and how we could do it, and see what we can do and bring it back and answer this coming in June. Chief Cox will chat and see what might be done. I must tell you that my question before was not meant to be aggressive or anything like that, but whenever I ask for information, I always want to know what the heck we're going to do with it. If we had it, I'm not sure based on our contract and so forth, what the heck will you do with it? But anyway, that's enough vocalizing. We'll take a look at it and get back and see what we can find out for to Bruce's question. Okay. Let me ask change.
Mr. President,
Yes.
hearing Director McKimmey clearly, I think he's looking at accountability for our contract. And I think it's not, creeping up on people. It's just that he wants to make sure that we're paying for what we get. Am I right?
Okay.
That is correct.
Got you. Other questions? I have just one that I could interject, and that is that you mentioned there were 3 CAL FIRE engines that are going to be assigned here to the area. What's the possibility of having one of those on the coast?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there is the potential for one of the CAL FIRE Type 3s, should the district be open to it, to have it be staffed in the district. It needs further discussion, but I do think there's possibility there.
Maybe we could agendize that for a discussion next month, Chief.
Yep.
The other, this isn't particularly a chief item, but in your packet is the PAS report. And as you can see, there was a sizable increase this past month, of the month of April. But given what's going on with PAS the last couple of months and with the stock market going up and down, I'm going to ask that the chief put on our agenda for next month that we hire an actuarial firm to do a new goal of our whole PAS situation for the healthcare of the retirees. It appears fine, but it's been 5 years since we had the previous study done. I think just to ensure that everything is correct and on schedule, I'd like to have it looked at once again. So that would be something to go on the agenda next month, and we can discuss it then.
Yep.
That's it. Anybody else have any questions, comments?
I have a couple comments just quickly to Bruce's comment. And I think I commend the board president for controlling these meetings and making sure they're on point. It's also, though, I think sometimes we miss an opportunity to have a discussion as a board because we have restrictions from the Brown Act of how we can discuss things offline. I met with Chief Cox and we discussed, I had questions for him about a little bit about this movement of people between the Bay side and this side. And he was very informative, very direct, very honest. And I think that builds an element of trust. But I think some of these one-on-one conversations lose their effectiveness if they don't happen within the entire board. Now, granted, we've seen the dark side of 3-hour meetings that get off track. But if we can find some sweet spot in the middle to where, and I know you do a good job of agendizing that, and so maybe we can follow up on this, and maybe Chief Cox or Chief Larkin can just explain a little bit deeper to all the board members how that agreement, that cooperative agreement benefits us and benefits the citizens of the Coastside. So that's my only comment to that. I encourage that. I encourage that open discussion because I think it builds trust within all of us. I want to make a comment about last month I brought up that triangle piece of property. I'd like to thank Gene for following up on that and describing the what would be involved in that to do anything with that piece of property. I would say as a El Granada resident, now that landscaping is in, the landscaping is awesome. There's such a small little piece of that triangle property left. I like to already see our people that are having to park in the neighborhoods are making their own path across that little tiny piece of triangle that's left. And actually, that's a good use of that property. So that was one thing. And then I want to bring up for the board is that there's a fire district annual conference coming up. I have some friends that serve on other boards, and I don't know if it'll be able to go in place with our current restrictions, but it's scheduled for October. And if anybody wants to see that agenda, I'll send it to Chief Cox, so maybe you can send it to all the directors. But it talks what's on that agenda, and I think almost everything on that agenda, it is for fire districts, and it applies to that. And for President Burke, there is one section on the current PERS liabilities. So I think if not all of us attend, I think some of us should try to.
Steve, who is putting that on that program on?
It's for California fire districts, and it's an annual meeting.
Thank you.
So, and with that, those are the only comments I had. Thank you.
Anything else?
No.
Nothing else? Okay. Thank you all. Without objection, we adjourn.
Bye.
Thank you. Good night.
Nicely done.